She told me not to wait up. Said it was just a girls' night. But when sunrise hit and she still wasn't home, I stopped being the nice husband and started becoming the detective. It started like any ordinary Friday night. She stood by the mirror in our bedroom, applying that perfume I bought her for our anniversary. I remember watching her from the bed, the soft glow of the lamp catching her hair, and thinking how lucky I was. She looked over her shoulder and smiled. That half smile she gave when she knew I was admiring her. "It's just me and the girls tonight," she said, slipping her phone into her purse. "Don't worry, I won't be late." I believed her. Why wouldn't I? We'd been together for 6 years, married for 3. Sure, things had felt a bit distant lately. Late work nights, fewer kisses goodbye, that quiet tension that sits between two people when words stop connecting. But I never thought it was anything more than routine fatigue. Life does that to you. You stop noticing the small cracks until the whole wall starts to crumble. After she left, I ordered pizza and turned on the game. The house felt too big without her laughter echoing from the kitchen. I tried not to notice the silence. The clock ticked on, slow and steady, like it was counting down to something I didn't know was coming. By 11, I texted her. Just a simple, "You good?" No reply. I figured maybe she was dancing or her phone was in her bag. By midnight, I tried again. Still nothing. I checked her location on the shared map app we use when traveling, but it said she'd turned it off hours ago. I frowned. She never did that. 1 a.m. rolled around. The TV was still on, but I wasn't watching. My eyes kept flicking between the door and my phone. The house felt colder. I called her. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Same thing. That's when my chest started to tighten. At 2 a.m., I told myself she was just staying over at her friend Emily's place. I even rehearsed what she'd probably say in the morning. "You're overreacting." We lost track of time. But deep down, a small voice whispered something else. The kind of whisper you don't want to believe because once you do, you can't ever go back. By 3:17 a.m., I was pacing the living room barefoot, phone in hand, replaying our last conversation in my head. That's when the unease stopped being a feeling and became a fact. Something wasn't right, and the more I tried to calm myself, the louder that truth became. When I finally gave up waiting, I turned off the lights and sat in the dark, staring at the front door. I remember thinking, if she walks in right now, everything will be fine. I'll forgive the silence, the missed calls, the dead phone. I'll believe any excuse she gives. But she didn't walk in. Not that night. And by the time the sun touched the curtains, I already knew. This wasn't just a girls' night. It was something else entirely. When the morning light broke through the blinds, it hit me harder than I expected. The pizza box was still on the table, cold slices untouched. My phone lay beside me with a list of unanswered messages, all green, all read by no one. I hadn't slept at all. My eyes burned, my thoughts kept spinning, and my chest felt like someone had placed a weight on it and walked away. I tried to convince myself not to jump to conclusions. People lose track of time. Phones die, cars break down, friends talk late into the night. But the truth is, when someone you love does something unusual, your instincts know before your mind wants to believe it. You feel it before you see it. I made coffee just to keep my hands busy. The quiet hum of the coffee maker was the only sound in the house. Every corner felt emptier than it had 12 hours ago. The scent of her perfume still lingered faintly in the hallway. That was the worst part. That reminder of her presence, even when she wasn't there. We met 7 years ago at a friend's barbecue. I remember her laughter, the kind that made people turn their heads. She was confident, magnetic, and just a little unpredictable. I was drawn to her before I even said a word. I still remember how she tilted her head and said, "You're staring," with that mischievous smirk that made me stutter an apology. Back then, everything about her felt like a storm I wanted to chase. She was chaos, and I was calm. We fit because we balanced each other. She loved spontaneity. Late-night road trips, dancing in the rain, kissing in public like we were the only 2 people in the world. I was the one who made sure the bills were paid, the plans were made, the future secure. Together, we created something that looked perfect from the outside. The first cracks showed a year after we got married. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was subtle. A late meeting here, a forgotten text there. The way she started sleeping with her phone face down. How she'd pull away slightly when I reached for her hand at dinner. Small things that didn't mean much alone. But together, they built a quiet wall between us. I asked once if everything was okay. She smiled and said, "Of course, just tired from work." I wanted to believe her. She looked sincere. Her eyes had always been my proof of honesty, deep brown, steady, impossible to read when she didn't want to be read. I tried to fix it, thinking maybe I wasn't giving her enough attention. I planned weekend getaways, cooked her favorite meals, even started going to the yoga class she loved just to spend more time together. But somehow, every gesture made her seem further away. It was like trying to hold smoke in your hands. Then, about a month before that night, she started dressing differently. More effort for casual outings. New clothes, new perfume, a glow that wasn't for me. I noticed, but I stayed silent. You don't want to sound paranoid when you love someone. You tell yourself love means trust, and trust means silence. But silence is dangerous. It lets lies breathe. That morning, as I sat on the couch sipping coffee that tasted like regret, I scrolled through her last few messages. The last one she sent me was from the evening before, heading out now, don't wait up. No emoji, no kiss, nothing warm. Just words that now felt cold and rehearsed. I looked at her social media, something I rarely did. She hadn't posted anything. None of her friends had either, which was odd. Usually, there'd be at least a story, a photo of drinks, a song playing in the background, laughter in motion. But this time, nothing. It was like the night had been erased. That's when my phone buzzed. My heart jumped. Her name lit up on the screen. "Hey, sorry, phone died," stated Emily's. "I'm on my way home." No apology for the worry, no acknowledgement of the dozen calls. Just a quick excuse. My stomach twisted, but I didn't reply. I wanted to see her face when she walked in, wanted to hear her voice and know if it trembled when she lied. Half an hour later, I heard the door unlock. She stepped inside wearing sunglasses and a tired expression, like someone who'd had too much fun and too little sleep. Her hair was tied up, her lipstick faded, her voice soft. "Morning," she said, setting her purse on the counter. "You're up early." I just stared. She smiled faintly and added, "Don't look at me like that. It was a long night." I asked how it was. She shrugged. "Fine. We went to a couple of bars, then crashed at Emily's. You know how it is." But her voice didn't sound like her. It sounded rehearsed. Careful, like she'd practiced the words on the way home. She poured herself coffee, pretending not to notice my silence. "You're really quiet," she said finally, not meeting my eyes. "Are you mad I didn't text?" I didn't answer. I was studying her movements, the way she avoided looking at me directly, the faint tremor in her hands, the ring mark on her finger where she always wore her wedding band. It was gone. That's when the denial started to fade. The story she'd told me didn't match her face. The scent on her clothes wasn't her perfume. It was cologne, a stranger's, and as much as I wanted to pretend I was wrong, I knew right then that I wasn't. I didn't say anything when she walked past me toward the bedroom. I just watched her move through the house like nothing had happened. She yawned, stretched, and tossed her purse onto the bed. The casualness of it all made my skin crawl. I could hear the sound of her zipper, the clatter of her jewelry hitting the nightstand, the creak of the mattress as she sat down. Every noise felt like a lie echoing through our walls. She glanced over her shoulder and smiled faintly. "What's wrong? You look like you didn't sleep." I didn't. But that wasn't the point. I looked at her and said softly, "Where's your ring?" Her eyes flickered. Just for a moment, and then she reached for her purse. "Oh, I took it off at Emily's. It was bothering me when we were dancing." I nodded slowly, pretending to accept it. But inside, everything inside me twisted tighter. My mind replayed that one word, dancing. With who? Where? Because the way she said it didn't match the way she moved. She wasn't hungover. She wasn't exhausted from laughter or a long night with friends. She was quiet, detached, like someone trying to erase what happened by acting like nothing did. She headed for the shower. I heard the water running, the curtain sliding. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at her purse. It was open. Her phone peeked out just enough to make my hand tremble. I knew I shouldn't. I knew that if I looked, everything would change. But the silence in that moment was unbearable, and curiosity is a dangerous thing when mixed with suspicion. I reached for her phone. Locked. Of course. But I noticed something, a faint smudge of lipstick on the corner of the screen. Not hers. Hers was a soft pink. This one was deep red. My stomach dropped. I put it back exactly where it was, and leaned back, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of running water. It felt like it was washing away the truth before I could catch it. When she came out of the shower, she looked fresh, calm, and ready to move on. She sat beside me, wrapped in her towel, and leaned her head on my shoulder. "Why do you look so tense?" she whispered. "You don't trust me anymore?" The question hit like a knife. Trust me anymore. Like she already knew it was gone. I mumbled something about being worried, about her not answering my calls. She sighed dramatically and said, "You're overthinking again. My phone died. It's not that deep." But it was. It was deep enough to drown in. I let her talk. Let her explain how the bars were loud, how she lost track of time, how Emily's place had bad reception. Every word felt like a stitch closing a wound she had caused herself. I nodded along because arguing felt useless when the truth was already bleeding through the cracks. After she got dressed, she left for brunch with her sister, said she needed to catch up. I watched her car drive off through the living room window. The sound of her engine faded down the street, and once it was gone, the silence returned. Heavy, suffocating, cruel. That's when I started checking. I went to the living room table, where she usually tossed her receipts. There was one half crumpled at the bottom of her purse from the night before. I unfolded it slowly. The ink was smeared, but I could make out the name of the bar, not the one she'd said they were going to. And there was something else, 2 cocktails, a whiskey, and a meal for 2. I stared at the paper, reading it over and over, hoping I was wrong. Maybe Emily drank whiskey. Maybe one of the girls ordered dinner with her. But deep down, I knew what that receipt meant. It wasn't proof, not yet, but it was close. I remembered the shared photo albums we used for trips. She'd turned off the location sharing, but maybe she'd taken pictures. I opened her tablet, which synced automatically. It was old, slow, but connected to the same cloud. I scrolled through the newest folder, one from the previous night, time-stamped at 11:43 p.m. There were only 2 photos, both blurry, both taken at a dimly lit bar, and in the corner of the second photo, there was a reflection, a mirror behind the table. Her face was clear, smiling, leaning in close to a man whose arm was resting around her shoulders. I couldn't see his face completely, just his jawline, his hand, and the way his thumb pressed against her skin like he owned it. For a moment, everything inside me went still. The air around me disappeared. My chest felt hollow, like all the air had been pulled out. It wasn't just anger, it was humiliation, a strange mixture of heartbreak and rage that made it hard to breathe. I closed the tablet, my hands shaking. My reflection in the black screen looked like a stranger's, tired eyes, clenched jaw, and a sadness that didn't belong to the same man who'd fallen in love with her years ago. I didn't want to believe it, so I told myself maybe it was innocent, maybe it was an old friend, maybe I was reading too much into it. But as I sat there, the scent of that strange cologne still lingering in the room, I knew denial was just a prettier word for stupidity. When she came back that afternoon, I pretended nothing was wrong. I smiled, made her lunch, and asked how brunch went. She talked casually, describing things that didn't matter, what they ate, what her sister wore, the weather, and all I could do was nod. But my eyes kept drifting to her phone, sitting on the counter, unlocked for once. It buzzed. One message, a single name flashed across the screen. Orion. No last name, just Ryan. She saw me looking and quickly turned the screen face down. Her voice trembled slightly. Work stuff. And that was when I realized something cruel and certain. I didn't know who she was talking to anymore, but I knew she wasn't talking to me. That night, the silence between us felt heavier than usual. She scrolled on her phone beside me while I pretended to watch television. The blue light washed over her face, and I couldn't stop staring at it. At the faint smile that flickered across her lips every few minutes. A smile that didn't belong to me anymore. Every sound of her typing felt like a secret being buried deeper. I thought about asking her right then, about the message from Ryan, about the bar receipt, about the missing ring. But something inside me said to wait. If I confronted her now, she'd deny it. She'd twist it into my paranoia. I needed to know for sure. I needed to see it in a way that couldn't be explained away. She went to bed early that night, saying she had a headache. I waited until her breathing settled, slow and steady, before I stood up quietly. The phone she kept glued to her hand all day now lay inches away from her on the nightstand, unlocked screen dimming to black. I hesitated. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would wake her. But curiosity had turned into something else by now. Obsession, maybe survival. I picked it up, my thumb brushing against the glass, the glow of the screen lighting her sleeping face. There it was. The message thread with Ryan. The first few texts were harmless. Inside jokes, memes, a photo of a dog. But the tone changed quickly, the kind of change that doesn't happen overnight. It was intimate, easy, familiar. She called him babe once, then R, then just used hearts and short replies that said everything words didn't have to. Then I saw a message from that night. 10:47 p.m. You sure he doesn't know? 10:48, he's clueless. Don't worry, babe. 11:17, a photo, her face close to his. The same one I'd seen in the reflection on the tablet. 11:51, best night ever. Wish it didn't have to end. 1:09 a.m. He's calling, I'll text when I can. And then silence. I stood there, my whole body numb. The phone felt heavier than it should have, like it was made of lead. My hands were shaking, my throat dry. I scrolled further, desperate and terrified of what I might find. And I did. Weeks of messages. Late-night plans disguised as work calls. Short trips that suddenly made sense. Even one message where she complained about how boring I'd become. How she wished I was more like him. It's strange. The exact moment your world cracks isn't loud. It's quiet. You don't scream, you just stop. Everything freezes. The sound of her breathing beside me, the hum of the air conditioner, even my own heartbeat. All of it felt distant, like I was outside my body watching a movie I didn't want to see. I put the phone down gently and stared at her. She looked peaceful, safe. Her lips slightly parted, her hair tangled across the pillow. I wondered how she could look so calm while I was falling apart 2 feet away. I walked out to the kitchen and poured a glass of water I didn't drink. My reflection in the window looked hollow, almost unfamiliar. I'd always believed that if she ever cheated, I'd know. I'd feel it instantly. But I didn't. I missed every sign, every late night, every sudden laugh at texts she never showed me. The next morning, she acted normal again, humming while she made coffee, asking if I wanted eggs, wearing my hoodie like nothing had happened. I watched her move through the kitchen and wondered how long she'd been living 2 lives. When she left for work, I didn't say goodbye. I sat there for a long time, staring at the mug she left on the counter. The lipstick mark on the rim looked like evidence. Silent, undeniable, damning. Around noon, I decided to call Emily, the friend she claimed to have stayed with. My hands trembled as I dialed, but I told myself I just wanted to confirm. Maybe it would all make sense somehow. Emily answered after a few rings, her voice groggy. "Hey, what's up?" "Hey, sorry to bother you. Just checking if Sarah got home okay after last night." There was a pause. A long, loaded silence. "Last night?" she said finally. "I haven't seen her in a couple of weeks." My heart sank. "You didn't go out with her yesterday?" "No, I was at my sister's. Why?" I didn't answer. I just thanked her and hung up. My fingers went numb around the phone. The world around me blurred for a second. Everything I'd hoped was paranoia just became proof. She hadn't been with Emily. She hadn't been at any girl's night. She'd been with him. When she came home that evening, she was different. She looked nervous. Maybe she could feel it. The change in me, the calm before the storm. I asked her how work was, and she said it was fine, too quickly. She poured a drink, avoiding my eyes, pretending to scroll through her phone. I waited until she sat down across from me before I asked, softly, "Who's Ryan?" The silence that followed was worse than any scream. Her eyes lifted slowly, her lips parting, but no words came out. Then, finally, a whisper. "Where did you hear that name?" I leaned back, voice steady. "Does it matter?" Her face drained of color. For a moment, I thought she'd lie. I could see it in her eyes, the gears turning, searching for an excuse that might make it all disappear. But then something in her broke. Her shoulders slumped, her voice trembling as she said the one word that changed everything. "I'm sorry." It wasn't an answer. It was a confession. When she said those 2 words, the air left the room. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just sat there, staring at her, waiting for the rest. Waiting for the story that would make sense of everything, even though I knew there was no version that could. She started to cry almost immediately. Soft at first, then harder when she saw that I wasn't moving, wasn't comforting her, wasn't saying anything. The tears fell like an act she'd rehearsed too many times before, a performance for forgiveness that wasn't coming. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she whispered. "It just did." That line. I'd heard it in movies, in stories, in other people's mistakes. Never thought it would come from her. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, voice low. "How long?" She looked away. "A few months. Trade." "Who is he?" "Someone from work." "DC. Ryan?" She nodded, eyes filling again. I asked, "Was it that night? The one you said was a girl's night?" She didn't answer, but she didn't have to. The silence said everything. I stood up and walked toward the window, the evening light stretching across the floor like thin cracks in glass. My reflection in the glass looked hollow, pale. Behind me, I could hear her breathing, broken and uneven. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw every memory we had into the fire and watch it burn. But the only thing that came out of my mouth was a whisper. "Why?" She hesitated, then said, "I don't know. I felt lonely. You were always busy, distant, and he made me feel seen." I turned, eyes narrowing. "So you decided to fix that by lying to me?" Her chin trembled. "I didn't plan to. It just happened." That phrase again. It just happened. As if betrayal was an accident. as if she'd tripped and fallen into someone else's bed. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I couldn't believe how small her excuses sounded. You had choices, I said quietly. Every time you texted him. Every time you lied about where you were. Every time you came home and kissed me like nothing happened. Those weren't accidents. She started sobbing again, covering her face. I hated myself for it, she said. Every time, I told myself it would be the last. I sat back down, staring at the floor. But it wasn't. She shook her head. No. I don't know how long we sat there. The clock ticked quietly. The house felt foreign. My hands were cold, my thoughts louder than her crying. I wanted to ask more. The where, the when, the details. But part of me knew I didn't need them. Every answer would just carve the wound deeper. Finally, she stood up, wiping her face. Say something, she pleaded. Please. I looked up at her, voice steady. What do you want me to say? That you can forgive me. The calmness of her tone, the desperation in her eyes. It almost worked. Almost. Because a part of me still loved her, or maybe just loved the version of her I thought was real. But love and forgiveness are not the same thing. I can't, I said simply. She froze. You don't mean that. I do. Her eyes widened like she'd just realized what she'd done. We can fix this, she said quickly. Therapy, space, anything. I'll quit my job, I'll block him, I'll… Stop, I said, raising a hand. You already broke it. You can't unbreak something by pretending it wasn't shattered. Her voice cracked. I made a mistake. No, I said. You made a decision. The words hung in the air between us, heavy and final. She sank into the chair, hands trembling. I felt nothing now, not anger, not sadness, just emptiness. The kind of emptiness that comes when the storm passes and all that's left is wreckage. After a while, she whispered, Do you hate me? I thought about it. Hate would have been easier. Hate is clean. But what I felt was worse. Pity. No, I said. I just don't know who you are anymore. She nodded, quietly defeated. Then I'll pack some things. I didn't stop her. I didn't help. I just watched as she moved through the house, the same way she had the night before, calm, careful, pretending this was just another normal evening. She took clothes, shoes, her makeup bag. She paused at the doorway, looked back once, and said, I'm sorry, for everything. I didn't answer. She left, closing the door softly behind her. The sound of that door, that gentle click, was louder than any fight we ever had. It was the sound of a life ending in slow motion. I sat there for a long time after she was gone, staring at the empty chair, the untouched drink on the counter, the small golden indent on her finger where her ring used to be. The phone buzzed once more on the table. A new message. From Ryan. It said, Is he gone? I stared at it until the screen went dark. Then I turned it off and slid it away, the final act of a story I never wanted to be in. The house was quieter than it had ever been. Not the kind of quiet that feels peaceful, the kind that hums in your ears, a silence that carries the echo of everything that used to fill it. Her footsteps were gone, her scent fading from the air, and all that was left were the ghosts of ordinary moments that no longer meant anything. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I sat on the couch in the dark, staring at the door she had closed behind her, half expecting it to open again. But it didn't. The shadows in the room shifted as the hours passed, the night crawling slowly toward morning like it didn't want to arrive. Around 5 a.m., I stood up and wandered through the house, one room at a time. The kitchen still smelled like coffee and her perfume. The bedroom looked untouched, except for the hollow where she used to sleep. Her hairbrush was gone, but one of her earrings lay forgotten on the nightstand. Small, gold, shaped like a tear. I picked it up and rolled it between my fingers, wondering how something so tiny could hurt so much. I ended up in the living room again, sitting in the same chair where I'd waited for her 2 nights earlier. Everything felt circular, like time had looped back to the beginning just to show me what I missed. I remembered that night. The worry, the denial, the way I'd stared at my phone praying for her name to light up the screen. It felt like years ago now. When the first light of dawn spilled to the window, I realized I'd been holding my breath. The sky was soft gray, the kind of color that doesn't belong to night or day. I took a deep breath and let it out slowly, and with it came the truth I'd been avoiding. She was never coming back, not really. Maybe she'd call, maybe she'd try to talk, but whatever we were, whatever we built, had already collapsed. There's something strange about betrayal. It doesn't just break your trust in someone else, it cracks your trust in yourself. You start questioning every moment, every choice, every instinct. Was I blind or just naive? Did I ignore the signs or did I see them and hope they'd go away? You end up replaying memories like a detective searching for missed clues in a crime scene. I remembered the night she told me she loved me for the first time. We were lying under a sky full of stars, the world still simple, untouched by lies. I wanted to go back to that night, to that version of her, or maybe just that version of me, the one who still believed love was enough to keep someone faithful. By 8 a.m., I finally stood up and opened the curtains. Sunlight filled the room, bright and unforgiving. It felt wrong, almost cruel, that the world could look so normal when mine had just fallen apart. Her mug was still on the counter, that faint lipstick mark drying into nothing. I washed it, not out of anger, but because I couldn't look at it anymore. I cleaned the kitchen, folded the blanket she'd used last night, and made the bed she wouldn't sleep in again. Small acts of control in a place that no longer felt like mine. When I was done, I sat back down and looked around the room one last time. That's when I noticed something. Her wedding ring sitting on the coffee table. She must have taken it off before leaving, left it there like a punctuation mark at the end of a sentence she didn't want to say out loud. I picked it up and held it in my palm. It was warm, like it still remembered her skin. I thought about throwing it away, about melting it down, about doing anything but what I did next. I put it in a small box, closed the lid, and tucked it into the drawer beside our old photo albums. Not out of hope, just out of respect for what once was. By noon, I finally stepped outside. The air was cold, sharp. I walked down the street just to move, to feel something. Every face that passed me looked normal, alive, busy, as if none of them carried the same kind of emptiness I did. I wondered how many of them were living quiet lies. How many were just waiting for a truth that would ruin them. When I got back home, I sat at the table and wrote. Not to her, not for her, just to let it out. Words came slowly at first, then faster, until I wasn't even thinking about them anymore. I wrote about trust, about how fragile it really is. How it doesn't break all at once, but piece by piece, until one day you look down and realize you're holding dust. I wrote until I ran out of things to say, then signed the last line with nothing but silence. That night, I slept for the first time in 2 days. The house still felt empty, but the quiet didn't hurt as much. Maybe that's how healing starts, not with forgiveness, not with closure, but with exhaustion. You just get tired of being broken. When I woke up the next morning, the sunlight didn't feel cruel anymore. It just felt honest. She said it was just a girl's night, but what she really meant was goodbye.